My last project is done, but I'm not ready to start my next comic yet. I'm in that weird in-between phase. I'm not making a comic, but I'm constantly thinking about the next project. Welcome to Panels in Progress. I'm Chris, and today's episode is all about what I'm filling my time with. After finishing a project, before you start a next project, that weird space where you don't really know what to do with yourself. I'll share what I'm doing, and hopefully, while we chat about this topic, you can either work on your comic, draw in your sketchbook, or get some ideas for how you can handle this strange in-between phase. When I think about making comics, it's kind of like a relationship. You can have a short relationship, a short interaction, or it could be a long relationship. I was working on my last comic for an entire year, so I consider that a really long relationship where I was very comfortable with the process. I knew what to expect every single day. I had certain things that needed to be done every single day. I got into the routine of it all. And now that it's done, it's complete, it's kind of like a breakup. You know, it wasn't a bad breakup, but I'm no longer working on that comic. I'm no longer thinking about that comic because it's done, it's over with. And so now I've got all this extra time, but I'm not quite ready to jump into that next project. This little gap in the in-between space is perfect for resting, resetting, reflecting, and filling that creative tank. And when you're filling that creative tank, sometimes you spark some new ideas of what could possibly be your next project. If you happen to have a lot of ideas, then this rest period could help you figure out what idea should be next. What gets you the most excited to work on? Because when you're working on a project, even a long project, you're always going to get ideas about some other project. But if you stay focused, you kind of just set those ideas to the side and say, maybe I'll come back to them later. But maybe those ideas aren't necessarily ready to come to fruition. What you thought was a good idea 6 months ago may no longer be a great idea today. And that's where refilling your creative bank account really comes into play. I think I heard this term probably from Jake Parker, but I'm pretty sure other artists have used it as well, where the things that you watch, read, listen to, all of these things, you living your life, that's all going to feed into your very next project. You never really know how these ideas are going to come together. You never know how two very different medias can combine in your mind to create something completely new or completely different. And if you're like me, you don't really enjoy too much like movies or television shows, things like that, then you've probably missed a couple things, and you probably want to go back and check those out now that you've got the time. Now I'm going to talk about what I'm reading, watching, and listening to at this time. So if you've been watching my channel for a little bit, you know that I am into many different things, many different genres. I like all the genres. I feel like you can learn something from everything. So even though, yes, I read deeply into horror and thriller and mystery, I also like to venture outside of that for different experiences, for different reasons. So let's start with manga. Recently I've been reading Vinland Saga, which I did a whole panel deep dive about Vinland Saga, and man, it's more than just Viking stuff. If you're into, yes, there's fights, but there's revenge, there's deep character building, deep stories about relationships between fathers and sons, family. There's introspection about life and death and what that means to live your life free of revenge. So definitely, if you haven't given it a shot, check out Vinland Saga. A new read is Zom 100. It's created by the same creator of Alice in Borderland. Alice in Borderland is one of my favorite manga series. Story, like from beginning to end. I had no idea that I would love it so much, but it was everything that I wanted it to be and more. And Zom 100 is by that same creator. Zom 100 is different. It's kind of like how to change your perspective on life basically this guy was working a soul-sucking job and a zombie apocalypse comes out of nowhere, and instead of being devastated by the end of the world basically happening, he chooses to start living his life to the fullest and enjoying his life even amongst the zombie apocalypse. And I think it's endearing, it's funny, it's supposed to be scary, but even the horrific moments have its humor in them. I'm really enjoying that series. Zom 100, check it out. All You Need Is Kill. This book, I don't know if the theory is true or not, but there was a movie called like Live, Die, Repeat, and then I think maybe it was Die Another Day, or it had multiple names. Tom Cruise was the main actor, and I really enjoyed the movie. And apparently this manga, which is actually an adaptation of a book, supposedly there's some relation there. I'm not 100% certain. But what I love about All You Need Is Kill is that it's a story that's more about death and meaning, and it's actually a cleverly hidden romance story. I didn't expect that part. There's a lot more on top of it, but check it out. It's definitely worth a read. The artist that drew the story or the adaptation of the manga actually created Death Note, and he's one of my favorite artists as well. I'm doing studies on his artwork on my master study series. If it's up already, please give it a watch. Some more current comics that I'm reading. Oblivion Song. I did a first chapter review about Oblivion Song. I'm continuing the series. It's only 36 issues. Very good story, very good world building. It's doing a lot for me as far as sci-fi adventure, and it too has stories about brothers and what life means to each brother. You have one brother that is in the regular world with a regular job and his own expectations and his own failings, while the other brother was sent into this alternate world where there's all these monsters. It's more about survival, but he found life amongst the chaos, and it's a great story so far. That one is by Robert Kirkman, who's also the creator of Walking Dead, Invincible, Skinbreaker. Man, he's made a lot of stories. But Oblivion Song I'm definitely enjoying the ride that I'm on with that story. Skinbreaker is another Robert Kirkman story. This one is just getting started. I'm only 2 issues in. The 3rd issue is about to come out. Probably more have been out by now. But so far, it's a story about tribes and responsibility and what that means. Like, can a old tribe change its ways to be more modernized? Is new always bad, or is new always a thing to avoid, or something like that? Like I said, the story is still new, but I think that's the meaning of what is going on behind the scenes in that story. And then this one I just recently read. It's called The Crossroads at Midnight, and it's by Abby Howard. Now, I loved her other book, which was called The Last Halloween, and she's a webcomic artist. She also has a video game called, I think You Should Slay the Princess, or You Need to Kill the Princess, or something like that. But this book, The Crossroads at Midnight, is actually a series of short horror stories. And man, the imagery that she puts in this book, as well as how quickly she can put you into a scenario, you know everything you need to know about the characters for that moment in time, make you care enough to be disturbed and bothered whenever the horrific things are happening to them. Beautiful stories. Scary stories, like truly disturbing. There's one story in there called Mattress Used. I can't get that monster out of my head, and the way she portrayed it and drew it, great artist, great stuff. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't heard of her before. So I also am an avid reader. I listen to lots of books. I also physically read lots of books. Currently, I'm listening to The Shining by Stephen King. I've watched the movie a couple times, and I've heard people say that the book is so much better. So finally, this Halloween season, I wanted to give it a try. And it's pretty good so far. I'm really enjoying the way he builds tension and the way he builds his horror. I think there's a reason why Stephen King has been around for as long as he has, and why movie producers want to keep making movies out of his books. The other 2 books I'm reading are in Spanish. I'm currently learning Spanish, so in order to get better at that, I'm reading books and listening to books in Spanish. So the one I'm listening to is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, and then the one I'm physically reading is Culpa Mia, or My Fault. These books couldn't be different. Harry Potter, everyone knows that story, but the whimsy and the magic and how things unfold, like, I know that she's a controversial author, but I really enjoy that story that she tells throughout the entire series. And then Culpa Mia is a romance book. It's not necessarily something I would normally read, but I can say that the author did a great job revealing things about the characters and their past, and taking 2 characters that supposedly hated each other and bringing them together. There's always something you can learn from that. So what am I saying about all of these books? All the differences. They're different stories, and they're all inspiring in their own way. I'm really enjoying how the stories are coming together. I'm taking different things from different books, and like I said, when you're reading, watching, or listening to whatever you're listening to, you have no idea how your mind is going to create a collaboration amongst these different things, and how just these little pieces could make something completely new in your mind. Or you, because you have these different points of views based upon what you're enjoying, now you're going to be able to add something new to the conversation, whatever conversation that is, and whatever genre that is. So one thing that I don't get a lot of time to do is watch movies and television. I'm usually drawing instead of watching, and even though I love to have things on in the background, you can't really pay attention to things like that while you're drawing. So I've taken the time to watch Weapons, which is a new horror movie, which I highly recommend. Has some disturbing imagery in there, and the way the director handled the scary elements and the horror of it all, I really enjoyed that. The way it was shot and filmed, like, there's a couple images in Weapons that I really want to draw myself, because I can just see it coming straight out of a comic. Over the Halloween season, I watched Scream 2 and Friday the 13th Part 2. What can I say? They're horror movies. I think for me, wanting to do horror comics, watching horror movies to see how it does, I can see what works and what doesn't work for me. And if I'm asking too many questions, then that means that I'm learning something about how to fill in the gaps, to hopefully, when I tell my story, I'm not leaving plot holes or things that don't make sense. There's nothing worse than watching a movie and saying, well, if they had just done this other thing, then this whole thing could have been avoided. 2 shows that I've watched recently: Interview with the Vampire, it's the remake of the movie, and Soulmates. 2 very different shows. Very good storytelling so far, and I'm enjoying both of them. But I do want to say that outside of drawing and watching TV, reading books, reading comics, make sure you get outside. Make sure you live your life, because those experiences are very important to your storytelling abilities as well. Getting out with friends, having dinner with friends or family, sharing real stories, trying something new, having a new experience, doing something outside of your normal circumstance. It just adds to the richness of your story. Because you have experiences that someone else might not have, it gives you a different perspective on how to create a better story. For instance, I have this idea where, well, actually it's actually been played out a couple different times in a meme, but basically the housing market is crap, and what if a house was haunted, but because the rent was so cheap, you decided to live there anyway. Just a weird idea that, based upon my knowledge of the world, based upon my knowledge of a person who really needs a place to live for cheap, putting these two things together could be interesting. Think about your life. What two things that could seemingly be different be put together to make something unique? Give it a try. I said all of that to say that even though this is a strange period between projects, it's not empty. It's a great time to just fill that space with the things that excite you, the things that you love, and the things that inspire you to create. Give yourself time to rest, relax, enjoy whatever's out there, and enjoy your life. Because taking all of these things is only going to make you a better storyteller in the long run. And taking the time before you rush into that next project, for me, it gets me even more excited to do the next project. I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel, because on my very next episode, I'm going to talk about the fear to start. We all have to go through it. Once you finish something, the dreaded blank page comes back at us, and sometimes it's hard to get things going again. So I want to go ahead and talk about that before the end of the year. But for now, if you have recommendations of some great books, comics, manga, movies, television shows, YouTube channels, whatever, let me know in the comment section below. Always looking for great recommendations, something to inspire me to create something new. And until then, I'll see you next time.